Okay, we should be live any moment now. Any second it'll be online. There we go. All right, we are live. Welcome everybody. My name is Chris and this is my channel Barnon 11970. Thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. And hopefully we can get some communication going because we really need to fix this before it's too late. Now, the first thing I want to say to anyone that feels like they've been hurt through all this, or upset or angry, even if there are people who have different points of view, we can all understand times when things, if we don't go the way they want, we could be a little scared, we could be angry, we could be frustrated. And the biggest problem that we all tend to have is we tend to base things solely from our emotions. And what that does is it blinds us from our actual goals. Because the one thing, if I can teach anything in this video, and I appreciate anyone that's listening, whether you're on the left or the right, is that we are all human beings. We all have feelings. We all pretty much want to get along, with unfortunately a few exceptions in this world that use greed and power as a motivation instead of peace, love, and harmony. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's going to make mistakes. But what's going on in this world, and I want to talk especially to people on the left on this, because I can understand, the basic concepts of unity, peace, love, tolerance, and things like that. Of course, everybody wants to be treated with respect. Everybody wants to be themselves without judgment. But in this world, unfortunately, we've been brought up that if you're not perfect, if you're not beautiful, if you're not wealthy, if you're not famous, then for some reason you're not good enough. And I blame that on corporate America, corporations, the media, and the average people in this world. Now, the problem is, even though you may be justified in your own mind of what you're doing is right, we have to see things for what they are. And right now, if you are trying to march for a cause and you're trying to do it peacefully, I mean, you have every right to do that. Everybody has the right of the freedom of speech. That's whether you think this is the best country in the world or the worst country in the world or somewhere in between. We do have some rights here that if you were in other places, would not even be a consideration. So keep that in mind. We need to appreciate what we have, but we do want to make things better for us all. Now, obviously, we're not all going to be happy because, like they say, you could please some of the people all of the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. It's unfortunate. But if you are trying to have a cause that is talking about unity and talking about peace and love and tolerance, you have to realize that when you are marching and you are saying hateful things and you are hurting others and you are judging others based on their right to have a point of view, it's not sending a good positive message to your cause. And this is causing a division in this country and pretty much around the world, because especially the younger generation, and we are all young at one point, we are easily influenced by the media, by the people that we think are our heroes, which are baseball players or singers or actors or actresses, and we tend to listen and do what they say. And unfortunately, when you get older, you realize that a lot of that is so they can take advantage of our emotions, of our causes, so they could profit from them. And that's what it really boils down to. The same thing goes for media in general. Obviously, there are always going to be exceptions to rules, and the same thing is definitely for the government. The government's job is to steal as much of our wealth as possible without us getting to the point where we want to stop them. And anytime the truth starts coming out that they are stealing from us and they are making us poorer by the day, they always love to either start a cause or help to continue a cause, so you are distracted and angry at the wrong people. And I can understand when people get angry. Nobody likes their liberties taken away from them or their freedom taken away. Nobody likes to live in fear, whether it is justified or just a paranoid delusion of something that you heard. And if I could teach anything in this world, that unless we work together as a human being, as a species, all we're going to do is separate and divide ourselves even more. And all I have to ask is, because if you've ever heard the term two wrongs don't make a right, I can understand if a certain group or a certain individual, a certain gender, a certain race, whatever, hurt others in the past. That you cannot justify evil. Evil is evil regardless of skin color, sexual preference, religion, what have you. But if all of a sudden the tables turn and you do what the oppressors did to you, then ask yourself in a logical point of view without the emotion, how would you be considered any better? The idea is to rise above, to learn from negativity and say, I will never be what somebody was to me. And trust me, I know what that's like. Growing up in New York, growing up as a heavier child who was not as popular, who had a poor upbringing because our family was very poor at the time, I was made fun of a lot. I could have become one of those people that became very bitter and wanted to hurt others. But instead, I turned it into something positive and said, I know what it feels like to be insulted. I know what it feels like to be attacked. I know what it feels like for people to want to hurt me, even though they didn't know me as a person or a human being. And I don't ever want to put somebody through how I felt. Now, of course, that's not always easy. Sometimes emotions run high. Sometimes there are people that will push your buttons to the point where you want to lash back. I understand that. I've been there. I had a channel that I shut down years ago because somebody tried to be an antagonist and used certain things like the death of my father to try and have some kind of agenda to get me emotionally upset. There's still people that try it to this day. Sometimes it works a little bit, but I don't want to go out and murder anybody or damage somebody's property because of it. And I'm seeing all these different marches and all these different causes right now. And people are protesting and marching, and they have the right to do these things. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to preach, for example, like and I'm just going to use an example, when they had that women's march, they were talking about women's rights. But the women that were excluded were ones that had the right to life. Now you cannot push people out of a cause. If it's supposed to be women's rights, it's supposed to be all women. If you preach unity, you cannot say, well, we want unity and we want togetherness, but not these people, not that group, not that particular person, because they don't think the way we do. And the problem I'm noticing in this world is instead of people trying to sit down and communicate with one another, we tend to just lash out and want to hurt one another. Because ultimately, if we were living in a utopia, there would be no reason to fight. It's the fact that healthcare is so expensive, you can't afford it, or it takes a large chunk of your money. I haven't been able to afford Obamacare. I never had it, and I've had to pay penalties every year. The fact that food, you get less from more money. It makes it harder. Trying to earn a living when jobs are going overseas. The racial tensions, which are caused by governments, they take advantage of us. And we somehow refuse to listen and see it, and we turn on each other, our fellow brothers and sisters. And the corporations and the governments who will sit there and say everything that you want to hear, who will pretend to tell you how much they care, are putting their hands in your pocket and stealing what little currency you have without you realizing it, and we thank them for it. And in the end, we hate each other, we rob from each other, we destroy each other's property, and there's got to be a better way. So I'm hoping those who are listening and continue to listen will see a voice of reason that when you try and live a life based on solely emotion, and I've been there, you will quickly go to judgment. You will believe things that you hear without research. You will never verify things. You will like a certain person or persons and just agree with whatever they say and whatever they do, no matter what it is, even if it's something you don't really agree with. Now, you may like Madonna, for example, but to say that you want to blow up the White House is not something you want to teach your children. I saw signs where they were little girls under the age of 8, it looked like, that their parents put signs on them that said, "Don't grab me by the you know what." Is that something you want to teach your child? And we're taking away the responsibility for what we are responsible for. In other words, what we do and don't do. And we seem to want to blame it on everyone else. It's always somebody else's problem. Well, if you were brought up with alcoholics, as bad as that might be, it's your choice to become an alcoholic or not to become an alcoholic. You can use the excuse of, well, that's all I'm familiar with, so I guess I have to go down that road too. Or you can say, I know the pain of what it feels like to live in a house and a family of alcoholics. I don't ever want to be that way. I don't want my children to ever be that way. And we need to take the responsibility back. So you get people like Hollywood who are millionaires, who are catered to in every way that you can imagine and probably can't imagine. They are raised above to the point where anything they say holds meaning for thousands upon thousands of people who will follow what they do. And there are people who pay them to make sure that you are guided in a certain direction and you don't stop and think because you're trusting them. And that's, I think, the problem with so many people not wanting to hear what's really happening to us all, because we put so much trust in others. And we're brought up to say, okay, you got to go to school, you got to respect your teachers, you got to listen to them. You got to, when you watch the news as you get older, you got to respect them because they know what they're doing. And when you hear about the government and the people that are running it, you got to respect them because they know what they're doing. And if you notice, they're all doing things that eventually lead us to more wars, more poverty, more division. And we want to trust them. We need to find a better way, because I want to ask anybody out there, whether you're on the left or the right, this is why I say the two-party system's got to go. We are all human beings. We need to work together and find a mutual ground to the point where both parties are satisfied. Because if you have one side thinking that they're going to acquire everything and the other side is just going to have to take it, regardless of which side it is, it's never going to work. It's an unrealistic point of view. And for every person that has a certain way that they want to think, it's okay to disagree with somebody else's choice, but they have the right to do it. And if we keep coddling and we keep ignoring and we keep giving prizes to everybody, we're not teaching, especially our children, to grow up and say, I'm responsible for my choices. Instead, they're teaching us to say, blame everybody else, it's somebody else's fault. Because that's an easier way to do it, and it doesn't require a lot of effort. It requires effort to change a bad habit or a bad situation, but it's a lot more rewarding. It's a lot easier to sit back and say, well, I'm an alcoholic because my parents were an alcoholic, so it's not my fault, it's my parents' fault. And then you sit back and slowly kill yourself, or maybe kill someone else, because you chose to not do anything about it because it was difficult, or people told you it's not easy. And people will coddle you and say, it's okay, you're a victim, and you tend to believe it. And unless we start to understand that we are responsible for what we do and what we don't do, and there are consequences for each, and if we just base everything on emotion, especially negative emotion, all we're doing is destroying our own public property, hurting our fellow human beings, and teaching the younger generations who are going to not just listen to what we say, but do what they see. We're teaching them that it's okay to be separate. It's okay to blame others. It's okay to not take responsibility. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to hurt others or steal property or damage property because you're angry and you can't get what you want. And if you think that's going to bring us to a better world, I'm sorry to say, you're going to be part of the problem. So people can disagree with what I'm saying right now. People don't even have to like what I say. But if You cannot create a dialogue to give me an example of why I'm wrong in a polite, respectful way. There is no way to communicate, and there is separation and division. And if you learn the art of war, which has been around for centuries, governments have learned that the way that the small amount of people at the top can control the large amount of people from the bottom is by getting the people at the bottom to fight themselves, to concentrate their frustrations, their fears, their insecurities on each other. So they never pay attention to the criminals who are stealing from you as you speak, not even literally taking out of your pocket. Because every moment you have $1 in a bank, it's losing purchasing power every time they print more money. It loses its value. Prices don't go up. The currency that you have devaluates. And they don't want you to know that. That's why they don't teach certain things in school. That's why you'll never see it on Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers. They'll never hear a sports hero tell you about the dangers of what the Federal Reserve really is and how it affects the American people and the people around the world. You'll never learn in school that the 13th Amendment, although they teach you is about slavery, is nothing more than redefining the legal definition of the word slavery. If you actually look at the 13th Amendment, it says it legally defines the term slavery as involuntary servitude. What that means is if they forced you to do something, that is involuntarily making you do something. That's involuntary servitude. They cannot force you to do something. But if you do it on your own free will, whether you think it's right or wrong, you are giving up your ability and you become a legal slave under the legal definition of the word. But they will never teach you that in school. You'll never see that on a PBS or National Geographic special. They don't want you to know these things because they want you to trust them. And if you look at the church, if you look at politics, if you look at the media, if you look at superstars and sports athletes and actors and actresses, they tend to fail us over and over again, and yet many people by the millions will listen to what they have to say. They are told what to say. They are reading from a script. They live in a world that is not like ours. That's why they call us the regular people, the common people, the ordinary people. What is ordinary about you? What is different between you and them other than the fact that they have a lot more paper dollars in their bank accounts? And we may be jealous. We may be afraid. We may be envious. We may be hateful. But if we spread that hate and that negativity, what are we teaching this world? How are we deserving of a utopia? For those who are religious, how would any God look down at what we're doing and say, these people have the right to go to heaven or to be saved, when all they do is want to hurt and destroy one another because somebody may have something that someone else is envious of, or it has a different skin color, or a different sexual preference, or a different point of view. So you don't have to like everybody. You don't have to agree with everybody. But unless they are infringing on your rights, they are allowed to have a difference of opinion. And you cannot preach unity when you are calling for division and saying, if you don't agree with us, you cannot be heard. We don't want you here. You cannot say you want to protect the environment and protect the people and say that certain groups are going to damage America when looting and riots are going on and public property is being destroyed. It sends a bad message, and all we're going to do is teach the next generation to be worse. And that's our choice. But the beautiful thing about choice is any choice you make, you could make another. So it's not too late. We are not having another civil war as of yet. But it can happen if we choose to continue to go down this path. So I am pleading for people. You don't have to just change your ideals overnight. But how about sit down and talk to people, verify things. Don't take things out of context just to spread an agenda, because then you're just helping the very people who are keeping us all enslaved. So I am begging and pleading for people to find a better way and see the true criminals, the true instigators. There's a reason why there are 8 people in this world that have more wealth than half of the population on the entire planet. They don't care about us. They'll tell you everything that you want to hear. Movie stars and actors are paid to be pretenders. When was the last time any of these people that get up on their podiums and do their speeches and get you all riled up, when did any of them ever come down into the middle of the crowd and say, hey, I am part of you. I am your friend. I really care. They go up, they get paid most of the time to go up there, say a pre-written speech that was probably written by someone else. They do their job. They walk off the stage with no consequence of what people do based on what was said. And some reason we give them credibility. This has to stop. In my 46 years of life, I've never seen such division, such anger, and just all around going backwards. There is no time in history where hatred, riots, division, and negativity led anyone into a better world. And we still have time to change it. But that's our choice. If this voice cannot be heard for long, and people cannot sit down and reason and get along and try and find a way that helps everyone, we're in trouble. And we deserve it. Because let me tell you something. If I was God, and I look down at this world today of all the people wanting to hurt each other, all the people that want to destroy one another, all the anger and division, I would not want to save half this world. And you probably wouldn't deserve it. So we could fix it. And this is, to me, I believe, is a very crucial time in history. And we have the chance to go down in history as the time period who destroyed themselves because of jealousy and anger and division and lack of communication. Or we can go down in history as the people that said, you know what? Enough is enough. It's time to take my life back. It's time to take responsibility. It's time to find a better way. So that's up to you. And I'm talking to people all around the world. And for those who are listening right now, it means the world to me, whether you're listening to it live or you're listening to it days, weeks, months later. So I want to thank you for listening to what I have to say. And if it changed the mind of one person, then it achieved its goal. I hope it's more than that. I hope people are tired of the anger and the hatred. It's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to hurt somebody or make them feel bad, because then 2 wrongs don't make a right, and you have no right to tell people you're in for unity when you're dividing the people. Togetherness when you are segregating a certain group or a certain people. Take responsibility for what you do and what you don't do, and realize there's always consequences that you may not see right in front of you, and it could be a long way down the road, but it's going to affect us like it's been doing for generations. So thank you for listening. If you want to leave a comment, I appreciate it. If you want to subscribe, we would love to have you. But let's try and find a better way. Otherwise, are we really worth saving? That's something to hopefully think about. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening.